Democrats are wondering what they need to do differently, what they need to do better, how to reach out and connect to the average voter to tell them, we see you, we hear you, we are you. Or barring that, at least, we don't hate you. The Democrats' "we don't hate you" tour only seems imperative now that election results confirm that a lot of the electorate seems to think that Democrats hate them. The rural, the non-college graduate, the white, the straight male, the punchline people. It turns out that if you decry whiteness and white supremacy 10 to 20,000 times, white people, some of whom might not be smart enough to understand the deep historical context of what you mean, or to get the subtle, nuanced difference between critiquing whiteness as identity and criticizing being white, but also maybe, we also are criticizing being white. Maybe the people who don't get that will turn around and say, I don't think they like us. And then if you are a white male, both combined, having heard the whiteness discourse paired with the toxic masculinity mantra, you just might form somewhat of a hostile picture of Democrats, reasoning, I think they have a hostile picture of me. This could lead to, and this is a big word everywhere lately, grievance. Now, in this theme, I want to share one, maybe it's a relic, maybe it's just something that happened 6 years ago, but something from a little bit of a different era where the concerns of white people weren't just dismissed, they were in fact treated as a threat to black people. It wasn't egregious, it wasn't scandalous what I'm about to play you, but it also wasn't rare. Brown professor Juliet Hooker explained that grief and grievance had the same root words for loss, but when communities of color experienced loss, it was because they were harmed. But when white communities experienced loss, it led to a propensity to do harm.
The two most important forces driving racial politics in the U.S. are Black grief and white grievance. Black grief is exemplified in the Black Lives Matter protests against police violence, which continue a long tradition of Black political mobilization catalyzed by Black death as a result of white violence that is subsequently channeled into public mourning. Simultaneously, during the Trump presidency, long simmering cries of white victimhood have crystallized into a potent politics of white grievance that frames the U.S. as a white country under siege from threats from within and without at the hands of people of color, such as ungrateful and unpatriotic Blacks, criminal, I'm quoting, Latino immigrants, Muslim, terrorists, violent refugees, etc.
So the professor there was doing air quotes for those phrases at the end. This was a common way to think. It was common in elite institutions and certain progressive quarters, and I would certainly say among the highest reaches of the Democratic Party. I bet it still resonates as true in a lot of those places, even if they're less likely to say so out loud for fear of losing funding. But the idea of grievance isn't easy, and it's not straightforward. The point that you just heard there, a variation that one woman's loss is another man's grievance, that's something to consider for sure. But lately, the imperative has shifted more toward the care and tending of the white grievance. This is pretty much what California Governor Gavin Newsom has been saying on his new podcast.
It's not that we're not right, but I think we're wrong not to understand more deeply and fully that people think we are deeply full of ourselves. Yeah. And we're talking down to people and past people. People want to be protected. They want to be respected. And they want to be connected. And I think this notion of respect is something that keeps coming back to me. People that just feel like we don't respect them.
And of course, when protecting and connecting, you've got to come correct to project a message of respect. Okay, fine. That's all fine. White male voters or rural voters, or perhaps the not most extensively educated voters, can certainly be talked to with respect. And that's great. But I've been thinking about a certain kind of grievance. The grievance where you ask yourself, what do we do with this? The grievance, which to Democrats seems illegitimate, right? Some of these grievances, well, every decent politician knows how to cajole and massage a little bit, right? A person simply needs to know that you have some care and understanding. Let's take a really easy example that won't get everyone very upset. LED lights. Why do I need to use LED lights? Okay, good question. Let me try to explain. Or maybe even, okay, sure. Doesn't the other lights seem easy enough? And don't they light things well? And then you explain and you meet them where they are. Maybe they had a grievance. Now maybe they don't. Now, not using a certain kind of light bulb in your house, it doesn't affect the kind of lights in my house. But what about another issue where your insistence on respect strikes a person of the progressive persuasion as disrespectful or worse, like your desire to own guns or to own semi-automatic rifles or to open carry? And when you say, that's not being respected, I'm not being respected, well, does this need to be rebutted or does this need to be respected? What is a person in the care and tending to grievance industry or project to do then?
I just had a baby, 7 months old. And, my baby, I was like, no, I'm not getting any vaccines. The doctors came in. They made me feel like a very bad mother for not doing that, right? I was very pressured.
Well, making you feel like a bad mother is counterproductive to the goal, which is to get your baby vaccinated. Let's be clear, that should be the goal of every society, because it is better for your babies and for all of our babies were they to become vaccinated. And your opinion of yourself or your opinion of someone else's opinion of your motherhood, and a good communicator can get that across. But can a person on what I consider to be the right side of this issue, i.e. get your babies vaccinated, can you really communicate respect in the face of this grievance? So this guy in the video that we're talking about is a TV doctor. He does well. He talks to vaccine skeptics all the time, and here's how he handles them.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the birth of a 7-month-old. The fact that anyone made you feel bad in the healthcare system, I feel like is a failure on us in the healthcare system. So I'm sorry that happened to you.
Okay, good communication skills, but pay attention to the nature of respect being exchanged. He speaks respectfully. He certainly respects her as a person, whatever that means, but he is not saying, I respect that choice, right? Because the absolute best way to bond with this mother would be to say, of course you're not a bad mother, but the doctor can't say that. Or maybe he could in an ends wind up justifying the means kind of way, or maybe from the theory that, oh, you just don't have all the information yet. But still, it's a lot different from, we generally agree on the same things and I'm just not saying it right. Think about this, what I'm going to play next, also from Gavin Newsom's podcast. Think about this request for respect, this specific grievance.
What do you mean for Trump?
I think there's sort of the grievance narrative that comes from Trump. This notion there is sort of a victim.
Well,
grievance
they did try to put him in prison for 300 years, right? They did try to bankrupt him.
Well, that's
if a guy had ever had a set of grievances, they did steal, according to us, and we're firm believers of the 2020 election.
What about my grievance about the stolen election? So how do you treat that with respect? My first instinct is to say you don't. You call out the lie. You let the chips fall where they may. You're never going to get election deniers anyway, right? Well, actually, you probably could get election deniers. People are interesting. There's definitely people out there who deny the election, but just want to vote for who's ever best on the economy. And if you say, all right, we're going to be Democrats who make inroads with Republicans and win back voters, but we're not going to get the Republicans who deny the election. Guess what? You just wrote off 2/3 of the Republicans. How respectful should you be to that grievance and others like it? Grievances that you do not agree with at all. If you're not respectful seeming about that grievance, and it's a big grievance to a lot of people, will you even be heard on the other grievances? I think it's a bit of a democratic fantasy to think that we'll be able to talk reasonably and communicate empathy on all of these issues, because there are big gaps in understanding and just agreement with what the right policy is. It's not only about tone or communication style. A lot of grievances are born of beliefs that run very much counter to democratic fundamental ideals. Take guns again. Most good Democratic politicians will go out of their way to communicate respectfully about guns. Hey, listen, I'm not trying to take away your gun. We understand you're a hunter. A lot will say, I grew up around guns. I respect the Second Amendment. But through grievance, all that's heard is, we look down on you and your love of guns. And you know what? The majority of Democrats with national profiles do look down on Republicans and their guns, their love of guns, their obsession with guns. So changing your tone and really appreciating what you're saying and what your slogans are saying, that's absolutely necessary when it comes to reaching people. But I don't hear Democrats actually articulating ways in which they're going to change, because I don't think they really want to change or are going to change. Not most of them. It's a tone-only thing. That we can agree on. Gavin Newsom, he's a pretty good listener, or at least he's good at performing listening. But I don't know how far you're going to get just nodding and saying, I understand, respectfully, I get it, and I appreciate that. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to change, we hear what you're saying, and here's our new set of actual policies. Not all of them, not 180, then they'd be Republicans, but to make some actual change. That's a good way to communicate, I hear you. Not only do I hear you, we're changing on these issues that you care about. Because right now, Democrats are in a stage which is necessary, but insufficient. And in some cases, it's impossible. It's good for them to recognize that they've left a lot of voters behind and to try to make amends. This is the reconciliation phase of grievance. I think Democrats are going to find out that some grievances can't be reconciled.